So let's start with this. Last year, as a global society, we spent over $700 billion in digital marketing. Huge number, more than any other, more than traditional advertising. So 700 billion was stolen. 700 billion was spent. From our conservative estimates, 140 billion was stolen by fraudsters. So it's like 22%, something like that. So I always tell people if you're spending money on digital marketing, doesn't matter if you're buying it from Google, Facebook, doesn't matter where you're buying it from.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
All right, welcome into Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. I'm Vince Quinn, and today we're talking about fraud. And joining us for this conversation is Rich Kahn. He is the CEO and co-founder of Anura. Rich, welcome to Future Fuzz.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, just give everybody a background of what Anura is and what kind of work you do.
Basically, Anura is an ad fraud solution, right? And then everyone asks, what's ad fraud? So ad fraud is anytime bots, malware, or human fraud farms attack ad campaigns with usually the intent to either directly or indirectly steal money from the system. When I talk about this topic, if I say bots clicking on ads, that kind of resonates with most people. They kind of understand what that is. It's a lot more complex than that, especially with AI, human fraud farms around the globe. It gets a little bit more in there, but in the grand scheme of things, bots clicking on ads, and then you kind of have an idea what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and so just give people even more perspective, because this might be new to them, this whole idea of fraud. So who is sending the bots in this case? So
we call them fraudsters, right? Because they're malicious people. They're out to steal, although there's no law in the books that says what they're doing is stealing. And essentially, they're setting out typically around the globe, international site individuals, and we've caught individuals in the past and gone through the authorities to try to figure out if it's worth taking down. Like I just saw a report, one of our competitors like, hey, we just took down $5 million in ad fraud ring. And I'm like, well, it's a lot bigger than that. It's a $140 billion problem. $5 million is like a thumbprick, right?
Oh my God.
So, but again, this is what some of my competitors do to get, some notoriety. They want to get the name out, and I don't blame them. Like they want to get their name out and stuff like that. We did one of our first ones was in 2017. I think we did a report where we call it live fraud paper. And it's basically when you put your phone down, the phone stops moving because it can sense movement. The screen shuts off, and then 6 seconds later, it starts committing fraud. And when we caught this back in the day, it was really bad because, if you had your cell phone, you were paying for data. Remember those days when we used to pay for data?
Oh my God, yeah.
it would chunk through their data and their battery life. So they would they pick up their phone later, half an hour later, and like, oh my God, my battery's drained. And then they're chewing up their data allotments very quickly, and they didn't know why. And it was this type of fraud. So fraud appears from all over the place, but generally speaking, it's about making money. And I always say directly or indirectly, because we talked about, competitor fraud, where a competitor will see one of their competitors beating them on Google Ads. Let's just Google Ads, for example, right? So what they'll do is they'll either click themselves on the ad a bunch of times to try to, because they know the clicks costing 10, 15, 20 bucks a click, depending on the vertical they're in. They click on enough times, it knocks their ad off because they exceed their budget, and then they pop up their number one. So that's kind of an indirect way of making money on click fraud, right?
Yeah. Which is crazy, by the way. It's for the level of spite that goes into doing something like that is just terrible.
Oh my God, yeah. In fact, I don't know if I can share my screen. Oh, maybe not. It doesn't matter. The site that I'm looking at is down. But I actually found a software that people can download, run on their machine. They plug it into a residential proxy network, and I'll explain that in a second, and press go. And you basically search for different ads. You have verticals or keywords, and then just press go, and the bot will actually do it itself. And it was such an advanced bot at the time when it came out, it would just get around most detection. It would bypass most detection, right? So what does Google do? Google puts out reCAPTCHA. We all know what reCAPTCHA is. It's those puzzles that we fail 30% of the time, according to a Harvard study. So it actually hurts the buyer's journey, right? How often do you see those now? They're still out there, but when you see them, what's What's your take on the site? It's like, oh, man, I'm deflated. Now I got to fill out one of these things. And you fill it out, it says pick all the crosswalks. You pick all the crosswalks. It's like, no, you're still a bot. Try again. But the funny thing is, with the introduction of AI years ago, well, AI has been around for decades, but the more recent versions of it have been beating those puzzles all day long. So it's not stopping when it was intended to stop, but it is pissing off the buyer in the buyer's journey. So anyway, going back to that original story with a competitor fraud, there was a piece of software that you can download called the AdWords Clicker Bot, was the name of the software. And you download the software, plug in a network, a proxy network of some kind, hit go, and it would do the dirty work for you. So you didn't have to do it yourself. There was a case years ago where somebody was actually having their employees click on the competitor ads. So they went to court because, again, this is all in the U.S. on U.S. territory. Somebody in the company said, okay, well, first thing in the morning when you get in, I want you to go to this, do a search for this, and click on that ad a couple times. Every employee in the company. And they might have had like 50 or 100 employees in the company. So within the first hour of the day, they were able to knock down their competitor's ad because the competitor exceeded budget, shut down the ad. So now their ad would be number one by default. They got caught and they got sued, and as rightfully they should have. But let's go back to the other software I was talking about, residential proxy networks, right? Because everybody's so like hung up on the IP address of where this stuff comes from. I want to know the IP address so I can block it on my Google Ads campaign. Well, Google only allows you to block 500 IPs per campaign. So that does you no good because as a certified fraud solution, which we are, we're a tag certified fraud solution, which means we're following industry standards. There's only 7 of us that follow the industry standards, that are certified to follow the industry standards, which is interesting. But we're required to block over 50 million IPs. So which 500 would you choose?
Wow.
So it's this problem that from a technical aspect is very, very difficult to pinpoint, and even more so to identify where people are coming from. So we talked about this a little bit before. Hey, we were back in the day, were able to identify, and I'm going to apologize to the audience. This is how I think. I'm all over the map. I jump from subject to subject, and it's just, when you think fast, and that's just kind of how you get into it.
Yeah, I'm following you so far. If there's a point where I need to put you back on track, though, I will
Please.
Interrupt, and I will need the explanation. So I'll let you know, but you're good for now.
Awesome. All right. So everyone's all hung up on IP address, right? But in 1995, that was great. In fact, there are competitors in the marketplace right now that do fraud detection, and what they're all about the IP address, right? And they're all just blocking this IP address. That's the way to do it. And in the 1990s, yeah, that was great. Everybody kind of had the same IP. You had almost a unique IP address. But now, how many of us have been to a conference, a Starbucks, an office building, where everybody shares the same IP address? You get assigned an internal address called NAT translation, network address translation. You get served an internal address that's not visible on the inside, and it goes through the single point router, just like at home, right? At home, you have a router. And that is assigned a single IP address to the outside world to do all the routing it needs to do to get you around the internet. Inside your house, you might have a dozen or a couple dozen devices like your alarm clock, your Alexas, your watch, your cell phone. All the devices you connect in Wi-Fi in your house have to have an IP address. But because there's a limit to the number of IP addresses you can do, you end up having one IP address on the outside world, but inside you can do all the routing with a bunch of IPs internally. So the reason why I'm getting at that is if a fraudster uses the same IP address over and over again, it can get caught, and it could quote unquote burn that IP address, right? Maybe they find an open, somebody's got a machine that they hack into, and they decide they're going to bounce off that IP address. So what's come out, these networks called, and they don't refer to them as, they call them proxy networks, but they're really residential proxy networks. So let me explain how this works. You ever see a free VPN service?
Yeah.
Okay. In life, we all know that there's no such thing as free.
Yes.
Okay. So when you sign up for these free VPN services, like every other service we sign up for in the world, how many of us read the terms and conditions?
Nobody.
None of us. Right. So in those terms and conditions, if you did read them, they'll tell you that while you are connected to their service, they're allowed to use your internet resources. And I should actually read one of them and bring up the actual verbiage, but they're allowed to use your internet resources, and it's pretty vague. So what happens is when you're connected to the network, you now have a fresh IP address that you're using to surf the internet. And now this new VPN service has access to your IP address. And what they do is they sell that IP address to anybody that wants to bounce off of IP addresses.
Oh my God.
And hide themselves, right? So you see where this is going?
Yeah, this is a nightmare.
So just so you know, these services tout themselves with over 30 million US IP addresses. So I can basically create 30 million unique clicks in a single day and never use the same IP address twice. So you see how IP address blocking doesn't work?
Yeah. It sounds like I don't know, trying to stop a waterfall with your bare hands. It's it's not going anywhere.
It's not going to happen, right?
Yeah. So with that then, because I mean you're detailing so well like the scale of it and the sophistication and how impossible it is to really stop all of this. So like if you're trying to begin, let's say, okay, I'm a marketing agency, I'm trying to figure out how my campaigns are doing. I'm trying to just understand on a base level like what kind of fraud I'm dealing with, how bad is it? Like how do you even get started figuring this out of how much it's impacting you in your campaigns?
Great question. So let's start with this. Last year, as a global society, we spent over $700 billion in digital marketing. Huge number, more than any other, more than traditional advertising. So 700 billion was stolen. 700 billion was spent. From our conservative estimates, 140 billion was stolen by fraudsters. So it's like 22%, something like that. So I always tell people if you're spending money on digital marketing, doesn't matter if you're buying it from Google, Facebook, doesn't matter where you're buying it from. If you're buying digital marketing, you're spending money on digital marketing, you have fraud, period. So the next question is, okay, now that I understand everybody has fraud, how much do I have, right? Well, the average person, according to those numbers I gave you, is 22%. That's more than $1 in every $5 spent is fraud. So the next question is, let's figure out how much it is and where it's coming from. And we run a free service for people that are interested in using our service, where we'll run a free scan for a couple weeks, and we'll show them exactly how much fraud they're getting, where it's coming from, and then a game plan, obviously using our software to mitigate it over time and get rid of it or eliminate it completely, depending on how they want to attack it. But doing it yourself, it's tough because I have some really intelligent people with lots of crazy business BI tools that they're using, and they're pulling data from all over the place. And when they come to us, they're like, I have no idea. I don't even know how to look for it. I can tell you that our ROI is low and it's dropping year over year, but I can't see where. I don't know exactly where it's happening. And that's what we specialize in. I mean, just to give you a little story behind how we started, in 2003, my partner and I started a company. It was a small ad network. For those of you in the audience that don't know what an ad network is, think of Google, but really small. A couple $1 million a year, not, hundreds of billions a year. So we started this ad network where we had a list of publishers that had different websites out there. And then we had advertisers that were willing to advertise on those sites based on keywords and demographics and geography and stuff like that. And we had software that would marry them together. And the publishers would make money, and the advertisers would get the traffic that would hopefully convert into sales for them. So that was 2003. 2004, we started getting complaints from the advertisers that something was going on. Their ROIs were dropping. They didn't know what was going on. So I looked into it, and I realized right away it was fraud. So my thought was, hey, I'm building this company. I don't want to deal with fraud. I don't want to be the guy solving fraud. I just want to go out into the marketplace, find a fraud solution, sign up for the contract, bolt it onto my platform, and just go about my business. But in 2004, nothing existed. In fact, the first commercially available fraud solution didn't come out until 2008. So I'm a developer. I figured, you know what? At this point, I have no choice. I'll write it myself. So I wrote it and launched it in 2005 and solved the problem for us. And it was great. Clients were happy. Everybody's making money, knocking out the fraud. And we just kept on growing. And then we just kept on doing it because at that point, we were just trying to grow our ad network. And as we grew, we had more and more people asking us, hey, can I use that software outside of your network? I know if I buy from you, I get the cleanest traffic I get on the internet, but I want to use it for my Google purchases, or at that time, Facebook purchases. Like, I want to use it for other purchases. And then we decided, you know what? Maybe it's time to sell this company. So we decided to get together, hired an M&A bank, ran a due diligence process, ran through the whole thing, and I spoke to all the major networks, probably half a dozen of them all together, and they all said the same thing. We don't care about the ad network. It's been done. It's not big enough to warrant us, making a purchase. But the fraud detection technology built is real interesting. And they all ask the same two questions. One, is it a standalone product? And two, do you have clients behind it, to prove a concept? And we had to say no. And they all said the same thing. Once you do, call us back. So that kind of knocked us in the head to say, all right, you know what? Time to spin this off into its own separate company. And we ended up doing some additional work, building a new platform, building a user interface for the whole thing, and then launched it in April of 2017.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Well, it just from a pure business side, I mean, it's such a beautiful thing and natural thing to come about, right? Like you're looking for the problem. It's clear that it's there. There is no answer. You go attack that. You build up this service. Like the market's telling you, hey, we want this on its own. I mean, that's like a dream situation. I mean, that's smooth. So good for you.
It sounded smooth, but it wasn't. So here's what we did. So the ad network was not growing, and nothing was like, we were doing a lot of stuff in marketing, and it just wasn't. We weren't adding new clients, and it was kind of a dying business because when we first started it, the only place you can buy click traffic, so pay per visitor, was pretty much Google. Google, Yahoo, I think Bing was out at the time, maybe, or Microsoft at the time. So those are the only three options you had to buy click traffic from. So we became that second tier network, which, hey, for a lot less money per click and built in fraud detection, it was like a match made in heaven. It was great. And we grew the company. It was on the Inc. 5000 list 5 years in a row. I mean, I won an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year for Technology in 2010. I mean, it was a great business. But then you started seeing more and more stuff coming from social networks, right? So now you had Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Well, TikTok came later, but X, LinkedIn, all these other networks started coming out. So now what happened is when you capped out your budget on Google, you had, 8 or 10 other options to go in still the tier 1 network. So our tier 2 network like us started to feel that bump. We weren't gaining any new clients. We started to attrition a little bit. So we said, you know what? We can run this with very minimal resources and we'll keep it alive for the clients that are on there. Let's take all of our good employees, which were all of them. We were happy with all of our employees, and move them from a profitable business to a business that has no revenue. So probably not the smartest thing to do, but we got to keep great talent. We didn't have to go searching for them again, but my partner and I had to feed it for a year or two until it could stand on its own.
Yeah.
So it wasn't all smooth. It had its ups and downs for sure.
Okay. Well, yeah, appreciate the honesty, right? I think that's part of the beauty of all of this is giving people proper perspective. So I appreciate you sharing all of that. But to bring it back then a little bit, because people, I think we have planted a monster inside people's mind. They're like, oh my God, fraud is everywhere. I don't know what to do. Is there anywhere that feels safe, or what is the safest place to advertise if you're trying to avoid fraud? Is there any difference?
Organic traffic, but it still has a little bit of fraud. But organic traffic, earned traffic, is probably the safest bet because it has the lowest amount of fraud, typically like 4 or 5%. But as you start growing, and you don't want to wait, because organic traffic takes a while to generate, and it's almost everybody I talk to says it's never enough. You don't hear somebody say, I'm doing organic traffic and I don't need any more traffic. Like, you never hear that. It's always like, hey, I've got a digital product. I can double my traffic without doubling my cost. Why wouldn't I? So then you start turning, okay, if organic is capped out, where else can I go? So organic is generally safest. It still has, like I said, about 5% fraud because there's a lot of bots that are surfing the internet trying to figure out and build social profiles so they can actually commit fraud. So still you get some fraud there, but really, if you're paying for marketing, there's your answer. You're paying for marketing. You're paying people to find a way to cheat the system.
Yeah, which is terrifying. And you said, again, at a rate of 22% on average. So you can guess that much of your numbers already, you're not getting good data. So then to flip it forward then, right? I mean, what are the benefits? Because then let's say I realize I've got this problem. I'm dealing with all of this fraud. Now I work with Anura. I'm getting a full understanding and the fraud's removed from the system. I mean, how much does that transform data? Like how big of a difference is that?
If you talk to any CMO and they have the opportunity to increase ROI by 5%, they're all about it, right? If you tell them, hey, with one inexpensive software that can improve potentially your overall average by 22%, it's a home run. I mean, it's, again, you run the test first to see exactly what kind of impact you have, because I come across companies that have 50, 60, 70% fraud. Now, when they're at that level, they know there's a problem. Clients are complaining, they're losing clients, the campaigns aren't performing anywhere where they used to. Now they don't have an ROAS. Things, they come to us, it's like the sky is falling. And it is. When they come to us, we're like, yeah, just the fact that you can feel it that hard, we know is a big problem. And typically, like if somebody's got under 10% fraud, hey, if I can still fix, an 8% fraud problem, is it worth it? Yeah. And everybody will tell you yes. But they may not feel it at 8%, right?
Yeah.
They may just be, it's the cost of doing business, or it's just how it's always been. I'm not worried about it. It's not growing. It's not changing. So they kind of get away with it. But, once you start getting that 10, 15, 20%, people start seeing things enough where they know there's a problem. They just don't know what the problem is. So that's one of our biggest things. We do a lot of organic traffic, a lot of content marketing. So it's trying to reach that individual that doesn't know it's called ad fraud, right?
Yeah.
How do I find those people? So, those are the kind of words that we have to keep coming up for and searching for and trying to figure out what this person is sitting there like. So a CMO is sitting there, or a head of marketing is sitting there like, okay, I've got a problem. What do they type into the search engine to find the solution? So that's what our team works on all the time, is how do I find that person that's looking for us? Because that's obviously an easy customer to get.
Yeah. And so to think about that range of it, because what you said is so fascinating there. I mean, some people, 10%, other people can get as high as like 60, 70. Are there any certain factors that tend to lean towards that percentage and how much it can change?
Yeah. It's where they buy traffic. So I'll give you an example. Give you some numbers. So I would go Google, Yahoo, and Bing fall into that paid search campaign section. So that's their search channel. That runs 10 to 15% fraud across the board on average. Social, so that includes your like Facebook, your Instagram, one or two others. Those tend to be around that 8 to 10% range. Then you start getting into like X, like 25%, LinkedIn, 25%. You do native ads. So you've seen native companies like Taboola and Outbrain, 20 to 30%. Then you look at affiliate marketing, which is a big area. Affiliate marketing, 45%. These are averages for these channels. You familiar with programmatic?
Yeah.
Ever see a banner? Ever see a video? 50% average.
Whew.
So if you actually look at it, so like those are the averages for each channel. And again, I just had a guy come in. He's got 100 campaigns running on Facebook. He don't feel any problems. And he's got one or two campaigns that he's running where he's like, there's something wrong with this. And then we ran scans and find, on those campaigns, 80, 90% fraud coming from Facebook, which is unusual.
Wow.
But it happens. So that's, again, it's whenever we make decisions in our company, we always try to let the data speak for itself, right? So when we talk to a customer, it's like, look, I can tell you all day long how great we are. I can tell you how we can stop the problem. But until we know how big of a problem you're dealing with, you don't know the impact it's having on your network. Let's run a trial, figure out exactly what's going on, and then see if it makes financial sense to work together.
Yeah. Now,
and that's really our goal, is make sure we have something going on.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, though, because you have this full analysis of the marketplace and all these different places where there's percentages of fraud. And obviously people would be curious on some level, like how you do your marketing. And obviously one of these things is I've seen you on multiple podcasts. So what is it about podcasting that it's something that you've decided to put marketing energy into? As
we're a bootstrap company, right, you're always trying to find unique ways of growing. Like if you get funded, okay, you got, tens of millions of dollars in the bank to help grow the company. You go out and spend big money on marketing. You hire a big marketing agency, you go crazy and spend money, and that's how you grow your business. But when you're bootstrap, you don't have those kind of resources. So you always have to find the more unique resources. So like for us, it's a lot of content marketing. We do a lot of writing of articles, ebooks, all kinds of stuff. Podcasts are just another outlet. We used to actually run our own webinars monthly. And the problem was we had somebody that was dedicated to finding somebody to bring on as a guest, right? Because we don't want to just have me talking all the time. So I have someone who's going to be on a guest. I had to pay somebody to be the moderator, do all the marketing, and we'd be advertising to the same audience month in, month out. It was our audience, right?
Yeah.
We would have the host invite their audience, but 90% of the time it was our audience. So then I started looking at the podcast. I'm like, you know what? We can be on podcasts. And what's nice is the host thinks differently than the other hosts. So they're going to ask different questions. So I'm not talking about the same stuff over and over again. So it's kind of unique topic, unique content. And then every time I'm on a different podcast, it's a different audience. So, and then what we do is we take the information, slice and dice it, and share it out socially, and put it on our YouTube channels and stuff like that. And we get some of these little clips get thousands and thousands of visits, just because the topic is right, it's relevant to what they're looking for, and podcasts help us do that.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I'm not AI, I'm not a bot, I'm a real person. So you at least have an audience of one, and it's real. So there's the benefit of that. But Rich, I mean, we've really come to the end here. So for everybody who wants to keep up with you and Anura, what's the best way to follow you?
I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, Rich Kahn, last name is Kahn. And then Anura.io, so Anura.io. And on there we have tons of resources where, when you're just trying to learn about this industry, go there, learn about it. And then if you have questions, you can always reach out afterwards.
Great. All right. Well, Rich, thanks so much for your time and melting my brain with the amount of fraud that's going on out there. I appreciate it. And hopefully I sleep again. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.